House Democrats gave the sign-off to the new USMCA trade agreement yesterday, and now it goes to the Senate, which should vote on it next year. For more, we turn to David Weston, anchor of Bloomberg's Balance of Power, who's joined by Senator Chuck Grassley, chairman of the Finance Committee. David?
Thanks so much, Alex. Welcome, Senator. Good to have you back with Bloomberg.
Thank you, David.
We just heard about this announcement yesterday from the Speaker. There's an agreement on USMCA. Have you had a chance to look at the language and/or talk to Robert Lighthizer? Do you see any reason Republicans would object to the changes made by the Democrats?
There's a lot of changes made by the Democrats that Republicans wish had not been made, but in order to get this otherwise very good agreement through the House of Representatives, they probably had to be negotiated. Now, they weren't negotiated 100% to satisfy the Democrats either, but compromise is how things get done in the Congress of the United States. So it was compromised in a way that I feel that the overall thing is very, very good, and we may lose some Republicans because of it, but it's going to get through the United States Senate probably easier than it gets through the House of Representatives.
If you lose some Republicans, will that be because of the biologics? That is to say, the intellectual property protection. And where are you on that? Because you have been in favor of lower drug prices. Yeah. As I understand it, the changes made might lead to lower drug prices.
Well, that's one thing, but also don't forget I'm very much for protection of intellectual property, and that 10 years is less than what U.S. law was, and but greater than what they have in Mexico or Canada. And it was just one of those compromises that had to be made. I think it will lead to cheaper drugs, but then if you don't protect intellectual property, you aren't going to get the miracle cures that we sometimes get through the pharmaceutical research that we do.
We've heard about what this agreement may mean for the auto industry. What does it mean for the farmers in Iowa?
For the first time, to be able to get a massive amount of dairy products into Canada, to get cheese into Canada, to get our high-quality wheat into Canada. It's been cut out, and I think that's the biggest advantage to it. But also, don't forget that if we hadn't had this agreement, and NAFTA or Canada and Mexico are the biggest trading partners of the United States, and so we want to continue that going along, and then we would have the threat of the president's pulling us out of NAFTA. That would have been catastrophic to agriculture.
So you said in a statement yesterday that the USMCA, as revised, was a win for farmers, for workers, and for all Americans. If that's right, why don't we get it passed by the Senate right away? What's the holdup? Why don't we do it this year, or certainly before the trial on impeachment?
Well, don't forget, my prediction of a week ago Monday when I spoke on the Senate floor was if it didn't get done by that Friday, we wouldn't have enough time to get it through this year. So that was a timetable I knew then. So your question now is legitimate. Why not do it before impeachment, or why not do it this year? This week and next week is going to be entirely on nominations and on getting the government funded for the rest of the year, and then you have Christmas and New Year's. We could do this if we wanted to be here the December 26th, 27th, 28th, and 29th, but then immediately in January, under the rules of the Senate, an impeachment has priority over everything else, including mandating working 6 out of 7 days a week. So we got to get through that. Will that be 1 week, 2 weeks, or 5 weeks like it was with Clinton? That's unpredictable at this point. So something like the treaty could be brought up, the agreement could be brought up if you have unanimous consent. But we won't get unanimous consent to do that. Any one senator can object.
Senator, spend a minute on the U.S.-China trade situation, because it appears maybe we're moving close to at least an interim deal, a phase one deal so-called. One of the sticking points appears to be specific commitments on buying agricultural products. Why at this late stage are we still fighting over that? I thought that'd been agreed to.
Well, it had been agreed to in the Oval Office on October the 10th or 11th, whenever that meeting took place, and I'm kind of surprised about it too, and I'm surprised. But that's something that we can measure. And it's very important, not just for agriculture, but you can quantify, is China keeping their word when they say they're going to buy $40 to $50 billion of agriculture products? Everything else that deals with intellectual property, that deals with their currency manipulation, that deals with their stealing our trade secrets. We can negotiate that today, but you might not know for 3 or 4 years down the road, are they really keeping their word? Are they living by it? Because we know in 2011 we made agreements with them and they didn't keep their word. So you can measure in 2 years, are they actually buying $50 billion of agriculture products? It's the reason it's a sticking point. China probably wish they hadn't made that promise, but for us, it's a way of securing making sure that they live by their agreement.
Senator Grassley, with all that in mind, do you expect that we will have a phase one, so-called phase one agreement with China before the end of this calendar year?
Okay, 2 questions ago, I heard you make a very positive assumption that you had heard rumors along that line. Monday, I had a conversation with somebody that I'm not going to mention the name, but it was very positive that we were going to have something done before the end of the year.
Okay, that sounds excellent. Let's turn for a moment to WTO, something you've been outspoken on. We now no longer have a quorum in the appellate panel at the WTO, and it's because of U.S. objections. And as you've pointed out with your Democrat colleague, Ron Wyden, it is a bipartisan concern having to do, as I understand, with the scope of the appellate review, as well as the length, how lengthy it is. Are we likely to come to a compromise agreement that will get the appellate panel back up and running at the WTO?
I want that to happen, but I want to say it's not only a recent bipartisan agreement between Wyden and me, but it's also a situation that's existed through the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and now the Trump administration, that the WTO needs to be reformed. And as much as I don't like the appellate body going out of existence, it's something that has to be done to get other countries to wake up that if you want the WTO process, and I do like the WTO process, it's got to be reformed. From the standpoint of getting decisions within the 90-day period of time that they ought to be making decisions, and to make sure that the precedents set in previous cases are followed and not changed by the appellate body.
Okay, Senator Grassley, finally, you mentioned earlier the funding of the government. Do you have any doubt in your mind that, in fact, we will have a continuing resolution? And if we do, how long will it be for?
1 or 2 things will happen next week. Either we get a total agreement on funding the government through September 30th next year with what we call an omnibus appropriation bill, or if that can't be done, we will have a continuing resolution that will carry us through maybe till February. And in that case, we'll have to make a final decision then in February, but government will not be shut down for 35 days like it was last year.
Okay, Senator, thank you very much for joining us today. That's Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa. Back to you.